I was mid-sentence in our Whitcomb retail group pitch, halfway through explaining how their brand could hold position against Caldwell's third-quarter push, when my phone buzzed. Davina's name lit the screen with one line: "Soren will take Whitcomb. Clear your office today." My throat went dry so fast I couldn't even fake a cough. Niv Caro was staring straight at me, waiting for my take on rollout timing. Calder Whitcomb himself leaned forward, hands folded under his chin like a hawk. I felt every second ticking by. "Give me 1 minute," I said, standing. "Need to confirm one detail." I walked out calm, even though my heart was hammering like I just sprinted a flight of stairs. Took the elevator one floor down, ducked into the restroom, and locked myself in a stall. That's when the second message hit. Keys on my desk by 5. No explanation, no apology, just an execution notice. We built Ellison and Cole together before we ever got married. That place was a second home. She cut me loose with fewer words than a dinner reschedule. I called her, straight to voicemail. No lie, it felt like the floor had a tilt to it. Like gravity shifted and I was trying not to slide sideways. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. I splashed cold water on my face, stared at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my hands were trembling. I pressed my palms to the sink. "Stop it," I muttered. "Not here. Not now." Back upstairs, I walked into that pitch room like nothing happened. Whitcomb's deck was still on screen. I picked up right where I left off. Media split, test pilots, adjusted spend targets. I hit every slide clean. Niv grilled me hard on integration timelines. I had every answer, tight and straight. Calder gave me one slow nod, then stood and held out his hand. "Let's move," he said, "with you leading." I smiled, full eye contact. "We'll have the docs in your inbox by morning." They all clapped like it was over. For them, it was. For me, I was getting booted the same afternoon. I walked out of that building knowing two things. One, I just saved the biggest account we ever chased. Two, my wife and business partner betrayed me mid-pitch. I didn't get loud. I didn't make a scene. I just walked. Because in my world, you land the win now, then deal with the hit later. That's how men like me survive long enough to strike back. Looking back, the signs were there. Davina hadn't asked me one thing about pitch prep in 2 weeks. Not even a fake good luck. Talia knocked once, then opened the door slow, like she didn't want to be in the room either. She stood there holding a stack of flattened boxes against her chest. Her eyes were red, not crying anymore, just worn out from it. "I was told to start packing," she said. Her voice cracked a little, but she cleared it fast. I looked around my office, awards with my name on them, framed letters from clients, photos from the early years, Davina and I shoulder to shoulder at Ellison and Cole, back when the place felt like ours. Now it all looks staged, like props in a retirement video. "Not your fault," I told her. "You just work here, like I did." She gave a half nod, lips tight. "Davina's got a transition scheduled for 2. Soren Maddox. Her calendar said to prepare the space." I helped her open the boxes. There was no way I was going to sit back and watch her do it alone. I stacked the plaques, tossed a few folders, shoved some framed stuff into a file drawer, took the Whitcomb pitch notes off the whiteboard with one swipe. The marker squealed louder than I expected. By the time we taped the second box shut, my temples were pounding. I drove home with both boxes riding shotgun. The headache started behind my eyes and dropped like a hook into my jaw. I kept clenching my teeth without realizing it. As I pulled in, I spotted Yvette Salgado standing out back with the Hendersons. She was leaned against their patio post, arms folded like always, watching the neighborhood the way a smart woman does. "Got a second?" I asked, walking over. She didn't flinch, just nodded and met me halfway down the lawn. "I don't want to start something," she said right off, voice low and calm. "But I've heard late-night calls through your office window. Not yelling, quiet, hushed, always when you were out of town." She looked over at our house, then back at me. "And twice, a young blonde came by when your car wasn't there. Not someone I recognized." I just stood there, every muscle in my jaw locked up tight. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a little silver earring. Small, sleek, and expensive looking. Definitely not Davina style. Too flashy, too young. I found this in your upstairs office trash a couple months ago. Figured it wasn't mine and it sure wasn't yours. I took it from her and nodded once. Thanks. I won't bring your name into this. Just be careful, she said. Small lies come with larger ones. Back inside, I set the boxes down and stared at them until my eyes burned. It wasn't grief. It was cold. A sharp, locked-in cold that started in my chest and didn't let up. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to get loud or pathetic. I was going to run this like a campaign. Proof, timing, control. Step by step. I opened Davina's desk drawer. Pens, note cards, sticky tabs. In the middle of the mess was a hotel key sleeve. Hotel Peregrine. No date. No room number. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I took the couch and kept the earring in my front pocket the whole time. It felt like holding a fuse I hadn't lit yet, but would. I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the silver earring pressed into my palm, and I knew exactly what passcode she would use. Davina never changed anything. Same gym pin for years. Same 4 digits on every device. Our original engagement date, flipped backward. She thought that was romantic. I thought it was lazy. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close upstairs. Then I got up, walked into the office, and opened her laptop. My hands were steady now. I typed the numbers. It opened. No hesitation. No second factor. Just wide open. I didn't snoop around. I went straight to search and typed S-Matics. A folder popped up labeled Consulting. I almost laughed at the nerve of it. Inside were 11 months of emails. At first it was clean. Subject lines about branding strategy, retail pilots, creative alignment. Then it shifted. Hotel confirmations. Can't wait. Counting the hours. One message said, 12B is ours this week. My jaw tightened, but I kept moving. There were expense reports labeled space rental and work sessions. Everyone tied to Mariner's Tower, Unit 12B. A monthly payee called SM Creative. The invoices were smooth, formatted like they'd been through our books 100 times. I opened her synced calendar, cross-referenced dates, everything lined up. Whitcomb travel for me, consulting session for her. Hotel Peregrine showed up more than once. I printed it all, emails, receipts, calendar screenshots. The laser printer hummed steady in the dark office, page after page sliding out like testimony. I didn't rush. I stacked everything neat. Then I called Lenora Key. She answered on the second ring. I figured you'd call eventually, she said. We met at a coffee place across town where no one from the agency hung out. She brought a manila folder and didn't bother with small talk. I left because something was off, she said, sliding the folder to me. Davina said you were the blocker and that I needed to be more flexible. Inside were duplicate statements, off-ledger consulting fees, payroll entries set up for someone never officially onboarded, clean entries that wouldn't raise flags unless you dug. She told me to code personal charges as client entertainment, Lenora said. I told her no. That was the end of my job. We did quick math right there with a pen on a napkin. At least $64,300 misclassified over 9 months, and that was just what she had copies of. If you pull backup receipts, it'll be higher, she said. You kept all this? I asked. Something smelled off, she replied. I don't ignore my nose. I leaned back and let the number sit between us. 64,300. That wasn't sloppy. That was deliberate. You might have just saved my house, I told her. She didn't smile. She just nodded once. When I got back to my car, I texted Clyde Renteria, a private investigator I'd hired before for client diligence work. Need eyes on Soren for 1 week. Quiet. Document everything. He replied in under a minute. Send details. I'll start tomorrow. That night, I logged into our shared cloud and flagged a backup of Davina's emails to an external account Talia still had access to. Clean copy, time-stamped, untouched. Then I spread the printouts across the kitchen table. The stack was thick enough to make a sound when I dropped it. I grabbed a cheap pen from the junk drawer and started underlining names, dates, amounts. I didn't stop until the ink stained my fingers and the clock pushed past midnight. I went to bed with the evidence stacked beside me like armor and the pen still in my hand. The next morning, I drove straight to Mariner's Tower. Even from the street, the place looked smug. Polished steel, white stone, valet guys who didn't even glance up. Inside, the marble lobby made me feel underdressed in my own city. I stood there in a button-down and jacket like I was about to get escorted back out. The doorman turned toward me with a practiced half-smile. His name tag read Eldon. "Here to see Mr. Maddox in 12B?" he asked, already reaching for the elevator key. I kept my face still. Yes. Eldon lit up like I was an old friend stopping by for poker night. "Great guy," he said. "Pays rent right on the dot every month. Comes through a corporate account, too. Ellison and Cole Brand Studio, I believe." I nodded, not trusting my jaw to unclench. "He's got a good word for everyone," Eldon went on. "Always asking about my grandkids. Polite, generous, real solid boss." I thanked him and stepped outside before the heat in my face gave something away. I got back in my car and sat for a second before grabbing my phone. I forwarded every detail to Lenora: unit, rent source, corporate tie. Then I opened Soren's folder and tagged every email that matched 12B's rental dates. The timestamps lined up clean, like train tracks. That night, Clyde called. "I've got movement," he said. "Soren met with 2 executives from Grantham and Ames, 3 times in 10 days. Where? Public lunch spots. 2 in Midtown, 1 over in Fogtown. I got sidewalk shots and timestamps." "Anything passed?" "Thumb drive, twice. Red one." He handed it off clean. No hesitation. I let that sink in. Grantham and Ames was our hungriest competitor, the kind that smiled while digging up your roots. After we hung up, I opened Soren's resume. The holes were obvious once I looked close. He listed 3 key wins from a boutique agency that closed due to acquisition. No website, no archived pages. I tracked down one of the founders on LinkedIn. His name was Wayne Carlo, and when I called him, he answered like he was halfway through mowing his lawn. "Soren Maddox?" he said. "Yeah, he interned for us 1 summer, maybe 2. Good designer, but he never led anything." He hung up fast. I kept digging. One name on Soren's reel, Ridgeline Outfitters, didn't sit right. I found their old CMO on LinkedIn, Len Bowman. Guy had a gruff smile in his profile photo and a title that said semi-retired but still consulting. I messaged him. "Quick question about a campaign in your old files." Len replied in under 10 minutes. "Those are my files. My team's work." "Why?" I called him. He picked up on the second ring. Voice had that hard, weathered edge. "I'm asking because someone's passing them off as their own," I said. "You ever heard of Soren Maddox?" "Name rings a bell," he said. "If he's using our stuff, I'll say it under oath." I asked if he'd be in town the night of the Palmetto Grand Gala. He said he'd drive down if I needed him to tell the truth. On the drive home, I called Aeon. I tried to keep it light, just to check in. She's sharp, though. Picked up the crack in my voice instantly. "Dad," she said, "whatever this is, finish it. No half measures." I stared through the windshield for a second, then texted my buddy Lowell Crane at Forge Gym. "I need a routine. 4 days a week," he replied 2 minutes later. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., no excuses." Next morning, I brought Davina coffee, her usual 2 sugars, splash of oat milk. I set it on the counter like a peace offering and said, "Thinking a step back might be good for me." She turned from the sink, still in her robe. Eyes scanned my face for a catch, but I kept my tone even, voice low. She softened. I saw her shoulders drop like I'd finally accepted defeat. "That might be smart," she said, sipping without a thank you. That night, over salmon and wine she picked up, I played my part. Told her Soren brought fresh energy, said the team needed new blood. She smiled, old sales smile, the kind she used to seal client dinners. She didn't ask why I wasn't bitter. She wanted to believe I was folding. Meanwhile, Niv from Whitcomb called. "The new guy doesn't know our shelf reset schedule," he said. He said he'd check the files. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Let me fix it, unofficially." "You sure?" "I'm not dead yet." Then Halcyon Manufacturing emailed. Their second quarter deck was a mess. Budget line misaligned. 1 slide had the wrong logo. I sat up straighter. My spine literally stiffened. I replied fast, asked for 36 hours. They gave me 24. I stayed up rebuilding it from scratch. No notes. 2 days later, I met Opal Fairchild at Orzano's, our first investor. Built like a lawyer, eyes like a hawk. We sat near the kitchen where no one listens. I slid her a folder across the table. Inside were rent payments to Mariner's Tower, dinners at Orzano's labeled Client, wires to SM Creative. Opal flipped through every page, her jaw locked tighter with each turn. She didn't speak for a while. Finally, she said, "Get me everything, every wire, every expense. You'll have my vote when you go public." I paid the bill without blinking. Dorian Pike and Reuben Voss scheduled meetings 2 days later. Dorian showed up with sleeves rolled and fire in his gut. He wanted names, timelines, fallout plans. Reuben, always the calculator, asked about exposure, reputation risk, and investor soft spots. Both said the same thing before leaving. "We'll be in the room." I called Emery Vaughn, editor at Inland Business Review, told him I wanted one interview, post-gala. No leaks at all. Just a sober conversation about leadership ethics. He agreed and kept it off calendar. I pulled Talia aside and upgraded her title without ceremony, had her centralize all vendor contracts and back up credit card receipts to an external drive. She didn't ask questions. The next morning she came into my office, shut the door, and said, "Davina asked me to clean old backups. I didn't. Figured I'd wait and ask you first." I looked at her a long second. "You did right," I said. "Keep doing exactly that." At night I wrote 2 speeches, one polished lie, one loaded truth. I marked the slide deck the way I would for a client. Bold headers, color-coded notes, bullets that hit like hammers. After work I ran 4 miles like clockwork, then hit the lifts. Basic circuit, nothing fancy, just blood, breath, and focus. It was the first time in weeks my head went quiet. I was looking for a spare charger in the hall cabinet when I noticed the locked drawer. Davina almost never locked anything. That alone made my stomach tighten. I found the key taped to the back of a file folder, like she'd hidden it in a hurry. Inside were loan packets I'd never seen. My name was scrawled on signature lines I knew I hadn't touched. The handwriting tried to look like mine and failed if you knew me at all. Collateral listed our place. Total amount, $200,000. It hit me harder than everything else combined. This wasn't about ego or control or who ran the room. This was our house. Ion's growth marks on the laundry door, photos on the wall from beach trips and bad hair years, the kitchen table where we did homework and ate late dinners. I sat on the floor with those papers spread out and felt something crack, then set. Fear burned off fast and left focus behind. I hired Cyrus Bell the next morning. Divorce attorney. Reputation for being blunt and fast. He flipped through the copies, didn't blink. "Forgery," he said. "Restitution. Control the optics. Do not get loud yet." I asked what that meant for the house. "It means we move first," he said, "and we don't miss." A buddy put me in touch with Dr. Marin Oliveira. I didn't want therapy, but I went anyway. She didn't ask me how I felt. She gave me rules. 3 things, she said. Boundaries, value, and a plan for anger so it doesn't own you. I nodded and wrote them down like orders. That afternoon I drove to the shelter. I didn't plan to adopt. I just needed air that didn't smell like paper and ink. A big-eyed mutt sat pressed against the kennel gate, watching me like I was late for something important. "He's been here a while," the attendant said. "Real calm, real observant." I knelt, and he didn't bark, just leaned his weight into the bars. I filled out the form without thinking too hard and named him Rook on the drive home. We walked the neighborhood at dusk, slow and steady. His leash pulled me forward when my head tried to spiral. By the time the streetlights came on, the buzzing had eased. Lowell tightened my routine that week. 3 lifts in intervals, 4 times a week. No excuses, no flair. "Move iron, move blood," he said. I showed up every time. At night, I mapped the Palmetto Grand Ballroom on a legal pad. Investors separated, clients buffered, clear exits, AV under control of someone I trusted, no surprises I didn't schedule. I had Talia set Whitcomb and Halsey on catch-ups for the afternoon before the gala, off-site, neutral ground, alignment and reassurance without speeches. I called Len Bowman and asked him to sit in the back row with a folder proving Soren's reel was stolen. He didn't hesitate. "I'll stand when you call my name," he said. Emery helped me strip my interview down to one sentence that mattered. "You fix harm by telling the truth and showing your plan. No drama." I called Ayan and told her the night might get uncomfortable. "Make it clean, Dad," she said. "Don't swing wild." I rehearsed both speeches until I could deliver them without notes. The fake one came easy. The real one took work. That night, Rook curled against my side, breathing slow and heavy. I slept deep and woke clear, already reaching for the plan. The morning of the Palmetto Grand Gala, Davina floated through the kitchen like it was prom night, gold dress bag over her arm, humming something upbeat under her breath. "Big night," she said, pausing just long enough to adjust a strap on her heels. "New chapter." I gave her a polite nod and sipped my coffee. She didn't notice I hadn't finished a full cup in days. At exactly 3:10 that afternoon, she texted me a draft of her announcement. I opened the file and skimmed. She planned to introduce Soren as permanent creative lead, and right after that, announce their engagement. 2-for-1 deal, sealed with applause. I replied, "Proud of you both." She sent back a red heart. I stared at it for a long second. That dot might as well have been a fuse, blinking just before ignition. I got to the ballroom early, before any guests arrived, walked the perimeter, checked the AV rig twice, and told the tech exactly when to switch the slides. No improvising. I handed Talia the clicker and gave her a single nod. Steady hands. Loyal eyes. Opal Fairchild claimed the head table like it was hers by birthright. Dorian Pike circled near the stage with his jacket unbuttoned and chin high. Reuben Voss took the far table, alone, thin legal pad in front of him, tapping a pen against it like a warning. At 6:15 sharp, the board went into executive session. Quorum confirmed. Council present. It was official. Under 6 chairs, I had placed sealed folders, expense reports, rent receipts, copies of forged loan papers. Not everything, just enough. When they opened them, I didn't want gasps. I wanted silence and the sound of conclusions being drawn. Niv Caro and Calder Whitcomb walked in together, scanned the room, and caught my eye. I nodded. They nodded back. That grounded me more than I expected. Len Bowman slipped in during the second course. Quiet entrance, no fanfare. He passed me a single sheet with his signature at the bottom and a sticky note across the top. "I'll back you if asked." I slipped it into my inside jacket pocket and turned toward the foyer just in time to see Davina air-kiss someone behind Soren. He had on a new tux, still creased from the rental bag, and a grin that stretched a little too far. I found out later from Clyde that he'd had lunch that day with the Grantham and Ames executive. Same guy from the earlier handoff photo. They shook hands over oysters. Soren spotted me and walked over like we were fraternity brothers. He reached out and gripped my hand tight. Too tight, like he wanted a reaction. I gave him the same face I give waiters when they get the order right. Polite, neutral, uninterested. "Big night," he said. "Yep," I replied. I stood in the back while Davina took the mic with her best stage voice. Full control, eyes sweeping the room like she owned it. "We have a few special announcements tonight," she said. "But first, I'd like to welcome someone who's been with us since the beginning." She called my name. I buttoned my jacket, stepped forward slow, calm, deliberate. My fingers brushed the edge of the clicker in Talia's hand. She gave it over without a word. It was time to do the thing I do best, run the room. I stepped to the mic, thanked the room for their trust, hit the warm notes about growth and partnerships, then shifted my weight and changed the tone. "Quick housekeeping," I said, steady and clear, "because we value transparency." I nodded to Talia. Slide 1 came up behind me. Corporate card charges to Mariner's Tower, Unit 12B, labeled consulting space, dates and amounts clean on the screen. I explained how the timestamps matched lobby confirmations and rent payments made on the dot from our company account. I didn't mention Eldon by name, but I didn't need to. A few heads turned toward Davina. She stayed still. Slide 2 replaced it. Orzano's receipts marked as client dinners. Signatures from Davina and Soren on nights I was logged into Whitcomb build sessions. I listed the times. I listed the project files opened under my credentials. No guesswork. Slide 3 followed. Hotel Peregrine stays coded as retreats, calendar entries pulled from a synced account. Time-stamped. Location tagged. Cross-referenced. Davina stepped forward like she was about to grab the mic. "This is inappropriate," she said, tight smile barely holding. Dorian moved closer to the stage and didn't touch her, didn't speak. He just stood there, arms folded. The room stayed with me. I shifted gears. "I also reviewed resume claims tied to major campaigns," I said. "Some didn't check out." I looked toward the back of the ballroom. "Len Bowman, Ridgeline Outfitters, are you here?" Len stood up slow, holding his folder like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment. "Those case images are ours," he said, voice firm. "My team produced them. He did not." Murmurs spread, low and controlled. Slide 4 came up, Clyde's report. Color photos of Soren having lunch with Grantham and Ames executives 3 times in 10 days. Dates and locations stamped in the corner. 2 shots showed a red thumb drive passing hands. I let the image sit for a beat before clicking again. Slide 5 filled the wall. Loan packet secured against our house. My name forged on the signature line. The total highlighted in bold. $200,000. I said the number slowly so it would land. $200,000 secured against our home without my authorization. Silence settled heavy across the tables. Opal opened the folder beneath her chair. Others followed. Paper rustled across the room like a shift in weather. I could see it happen. Faces tightening, jaws setting, eyes recalculating. "The board has the full file," I said. "Clients, you will receive direct calls tomorrow morning. Tonight, we keep this calm and professional." Reuben raised his hand from the far table. "The board voted in executive session," he said, voice steady. "Effective immediately, Davina Cole and Soren Maddox are removed from leadership roles. Bram Ellison is reinstated as acting chief executive officer and creative director." The words didn't echo. They settled. Davina's face didn't change. That might have been the hardest part. No tears, no protest, just stillness. Soren flushed red, then drained gray. He looked smaller without the grin. Halcyon's chief operating officer stood up next. "We stay," she said, "if Bram leads." Behind her, Calder Whitcomb gave one slow nod. I closed with the plan. New financial controls, independent audit, direct client oversight, clean lines, no spin. When I stepped back from the mic, a few people clapped, then more joined in. Not wild applause, just steady. I felt the air shift in the room, like someone finally opened a window. Davina walked out of the ballroom without saying a word about any engagement. No speech, no ring flash, no public stand. Just a straight back and a closed door. By 9 the next morning, I had a letter from a high-end litigator. Heavy paper, sharp tone. Accusations about defamation and hostile takeover language dressed up like concern. I handed it to Cyrus. He read it once, then slid it back across the desk. "We're not negotiating blame," he said. "We're responding with facts." He answered with the ledger. Forged signatures, misused funds, Mariner's Tower rent trail, calendar pulls, even the doorman's corroboration included in affidavit form. Clean, organized, unemotional. The pressure shifted fast. 41 days later, we settled. I kept the house. I kept my equity. I kept control of the company. Davina agreed to restitution and signed terms that made it clear. If she played games, charges followed. There were no dramatic final meetings, just signatures and silence. Soren disappeared before the paperwork dried. No forwarding address, no public defense. About a month later, Clyde sent me a photo without comment. Soren in another city, apron tied around his waist, bussing tables outside a casual seafood place. I looked at it for a second and deleted it. Back at the office, I moved fast. Lenora returned as chief financial officer. No ceremony, just a handshake and access codes. We hired an outside audit firm for independent reviews. Every account, every expense line, anything over $600 required 3 signatures. Weekly card reviews became standard. No exceptions, not even for me. Talia stepped into the office manager role and rebuilt our operations tracker from the ground up. Clean dashboards, shared access, documented approvals. Keegan Dyer got real authority over design decisions and stopped hovering in doorways like he needed permission to breathe. I saw him smile twice in 1 week. Emery ran the interview and Inland Business Review exactly the way we agreed. One long, even piece. No drama, just facts, controls, and a plan. Within a week, 2 mid-market retailers left Grantham and Ames and called us. "Whatever you're doing over there," one of them said, "we want some." I didn't oversell. I scheduled meetings. Every Friday for a month, I called Niv and Calder with updates. Revenue, staffing, audit progress, no spin, no polish. They stayed. At home, I walked Rook every morning and every night. He pulled toward the same oak tree like it held secrets. He didn't care about margins or headlines. He made me stop and look down the block, notice neighbors again. The nights stopped jolting me awake. Lowell watched my form at the gym and shook his head once. "You're lifting straighter," he said. "Looks like you stopped carrying something crooked." I felt it in my shoulders. I felt it in how I walked into meetings without scanning for threat. Ayan came by one weekend, dropped her bag in the hallway, and looked around. "The house feels calmer," she said. That stuck harder than any applause or headline ever could. 6 months later, Opal walked into my office holding a black frame and a crooked smile. She set it on my desk like a thank you gift I didn't know I'd earned. It was the new cover of Inland Business Review, plain background. A photo of me mid-sentence, sleeves rolled. The headline said, "Standards and Steady Hands." The wall behind me held 2 recent awards and a row of new client letters, the kind written after strong quarters, not splashy campaigns. The older ones, the ones with Davina's name next to mine, stayed packed away in a file box in storage. I hadn't touched them. Didn't plan to. Revenue climbed 38% over 2 quarters. But that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that people stopped glancing over their shoulders in hallways. They laughed again. They brought ideas without hedging. I spoke at Finch State University in a business ethics lecture titled, "What You Do When the Floor Drops Out." I told them it's not about rage, revenge, or drama. It's about the plan you can prove when the fire starts. Halcyon and Whitcomb held strong as anchor accounts, and somehow 2 clients I thought we'd lost came back through the door without a pitch deck or a call. They said they watched how we handled it, said they respected it, we didn't post about it, we didn't send a victory email, we just picked up the work and got back to it. Therapy didn't flip some switch, it didn't fix me. What it did was give me permission to say no without guilt. That was new, that was useful. Rook earned a bed under my desk. He figured out the timing of my meetings like he was born for it. He knew when to lift his head, when to stretch, and when to wait by the door. On days I thought I was too busy to leave the building, he reminded me there was a world beyond email threads and margin goals. If you asked what felt like revenge, I'd tell you it wasn't the clapping at Palmetto Grand or the vote. It was the quiet Mondays when the team walked in early, poured coffee, and started cracking jokes before the second meeting. That was the win. I don't think about Davina, except when Cyrus emails a restitution update. Even then, I skim and archive. I don't think about Soren at all. Looking back, yeah, I should have seen it sooner. The gaps, the dodges, the smiles that didn't match. But either way, I'm still here, acting CEO, creative lead, and a man who didn't fold. People say the whole thing made me stronger. Maybe, but it definitely made me simpler. Tell the truth, show your math, and don't hand your keys to a stranger. The night I locked the office, Rook waited at the door. We didn't say anything. We just walked the long way home. No speeches, just steps, one after another. What do you think? Was Bram too calculated, or just smart enough to survive? One last question before we part. When someone tries to rewrite your story, do you quietly build your proof or confront them head on? And before you go, will you tap like, hit the hype, follow, and drop a comment?